some people, but I decided to use this early 60s slab board for this one, and I chose out a really nicely piece of Indian rosewood, and it's got a good darkness to it. I thought it fit real good with it. It's a 9.5 radius, pretty flat, not as flat as it could be, but it's Fender. I like to have a little bit of a radius to it. I chose 6100 fret wire, which is a larger fret wire, kind of a medium jumbo or a jumbo fret wire. You look at the board over there that Frank's got, it's a good representation of some of the neck shapes that we do here at the custom shop, as well as fret sizes and, you know, just the overall feel of the neck. And this one has kind of a 60C type of shape, kind of a, you know, not too thick, not really too thin, but it's a good, good feeling neck. Vintage keys, of course. It's got the vintage spaghetti logo decal on it. I've heard it, even today I've heard it. Some of the people are talking about, we love the vintage stuff, but a lot of the finishes on the back of the neck are really tacky and sticky-like. I understand that. I'm one of those players that I've got to have stuff like this, where there's no finish on the back of the neck. That's how I play, because when I play, even when I'm not playing, I'm sweating all the time. It's just like, it feels so good just to have a bare neck on there, or another type of finish. This is what I've done on this one. This is an oil finish neck, like a gun stock oil that would be used on old guns and stuff like that. And when it's dry and stuff, and it sands out, really like powder, and you just hit it with steel wool, it feels like beautiful. The problem with it is that you have to keep up on it, meaning hit it with a little bit of steel wool here. You can get some more oil and put it over the top and build it up every once in a while, but I think the thinner it is, you know, you're that much closer to the wood on it, and it doesn't really get tacky when you play it. It's just a good feeling neck. So that's the finish aspect of the neck on it. And it's Masterbuilt, so Masterbuilt guitars are, you know, signified by, you know, the builders put our initials on the inside, so if somebody ever took it apart, they'd see that it was a build by me. I usually sign the inside of our neck pockets on these and date it, and you know, put down that it's a 60 Strat. A little bit different from the team-built guitars that we do. The team-built guitars have a stamp, like a branding stamp that they put on the inside underneath the pick guard and inside here and on the bottom of the neck as well too. It's part of our Time Machine series. So all those guitars have that. Masterbuilts don't. They just have their stamp in here and whatever was signature on the body. Same thing with the neck. Sign and date it. Put down what kind of guitar it is. And in this case, it's 61 is what I chose for this one. I also do a lot of the vintage, correct type of wiring and the way they did a lot of the stuff in the early 50s and 60s. I didn't go ballistic on this one because it's not really a Relic series guitar. It's more of a NOS, new old stock finish. But like on our Relic series guitars, if you look at a lot of vintage guitars, which probably a lot of you guys don't like have the opportunity to rip them open and look at, but if you look at a lot of books and stuff like that, and look at all the details and stuff like that, we try to nail a lot of that stuff, and I do that especially with my vintage stuff, right down to like chamfering the edge of the jack of it, because in the early days they used to have problems putting the jacks in, and it wouldn't fit in right, so they used to have to chamfer it. We don't really have to do that now because it's got a bigger hole, but I do it just for the look of it. So when you put it in there, somebody takes it off, they'll look at it and say, oh wow, they did that back in the 60s and 50s. I also include the nail holes that we would do, you know, when they used to paint them, they used to put them on a board, Fender like this, they would sit like this, so they could paint it and the paint wouldn't run off and stick to the board and stuff. And they would put nails, one right here, one right here, one right here, and one right here. So if you look at all my vintage guitars, they have those little holes on there under the finish. And a lot of people would never even notice that. Like, what's that? If you look at old books and old guitar stuff, it has an exact spot. Another thing I like to do on my guitars on the vintage stuff is like, they used to be known for putting, the builder would put a piece of masking tape, quarter-inch masking tape in here, and they would sign their name on whoever built it at that time, and you'd see like Linda, you know, in 1960, and it would be signed and the tapes like peeling up and really old looking and stuff. I do that to all my vintage guitars now. Well, it's got my name on it and it's got today's date on it. Or actually, not today's date, but the date of the guitar that I'm making. Even though it's not that date, but it just to signify when somebody opens up, it's like, wow, this is a real like 61. Even though it's not, it just shows this is the details that you guys put into the guitar. So those are just some of the things that we do. Other things that I like to do on mine too is I always sign my pick guards because I build all my own pick guards. This one right here, I think we did a set of the JC Limited pickups on this guitar right here. So it's initially the same guitar, but this one I want to do a little bit different. Josefina Campos is one of our new, actually she's not new, but she's the one that has succeeded Abigail Ybarra, which retired last month. So she's gone now. And people are really bummed. We're bummed about it, but it's like, you know what, you got to enjoy life. You're done. You've done your service. She worked for Fender for over 56 years, so it's been a long time. And so she passed the torch to her apprentice, which was Josefina. And Josefina's doing a lovely job on a lot of the pickups that she's doing. I look at all the details for soldering and everything on there, and it's like perfect. It's just like Adam's was. So I think you guys are going to buy a lot of the custom shop guitars and Masterbuilt stuff and looking for custom pickups. You're going to get to know this name really well because she does a really, really beautiful job. And this is a spec pickup that I worked out with Abigail before she was gone for a low output pickup, and I call it the Bone Tone set. That's what this one is called. The first set that I did, I gave to the Japanese distributors over there to try out. They took it, gave it to a couple of their artists to play, and they flipped out over the whole thing. So right away they started ordering more. We need to get more of these and more of these. So we had to come up with a part number and all that stuff, so it's in the system. If somebody wants it, they can order it. The next year I did a couple guitars for NAMM that featured that pickup in there, and the guys like Frank got to listen to it, enjoyed it. There was a couple other dealers I built it for, and they were like tickled by it. It's like, this is cool. Lower output, you know, there's not a lot of gain coming out of the pickup. It's more of a, you know, country or a clean sound, or if you overdrive with some pedals with a good amp or something like that, it's really going to respond depending on how you play on that guitar. If you're playing hard, digging into it, it's going to respond really well. If you play real light, it's going to be really clean, bell-like sound. So I wanted to have that different type of sound as opposed to all these other pickups that are out there right now. So this is something new that we've added to the list of pickups that we offer at Fender. So they're not available for individual sales. If somebody wanted to buy some replacement pickups, they're not available that way. If you buy a guitar, full guitar, and you want to order them with those pickups, we can do that, do it that way. Oh, also on the back of all Masterbuilt stuff, the builder will usually put their decal on the back of the headstock. If you buy a guitar and they say it's Masterbuilt, doesn't have its decal back here, it's not Masterbuilt. A lot of the other builders, there's 8 builders total there at Fender. We used to all put our serial numbers on the top here. A lot of the guys have gravitated away from that. They're using the neck plates that are pre-marked with serial numbers on them. So they've all gone to that. I'm the only one left that's doing the serial number on the back of the headstock, and it's something I've always kind of guided myself to where I'm at in my build, even though I build a lot more guitars than this. But it just kind of keeps me in sync, and it's a lot easier for me to look up. If I have to look up specs on it or something, I can go by serial number, I can look it up. It's a lot easier, so I'll probably stick with that for a number of years still, hopefully. The next thing I was planning on doing is I wanted to kind of put this together with it for you. A lot of the details, if you open up like a regular American series Strat, they're nicely made, played, and everything, but if you look at a lot of the underneaths, things that you don't normally see, you'll see a lot of the wiring's a little bit like quickly done, and it's not horrible, but it's not the way like it should be, where I could just take this pickguard, and when I'm done with it, it just drops right in. There's no lagging where there's a wire sticking up there, like, you know, and that happens a lot on the line production. They do so many guitars every day, and the beauty of doing Masterbuilt stuff is we can put a lot of attention to detail like this kind of stuff. And I like to do this kind of stuff where my wires will run perfectly, you know, nice and over the edge, and the soldering joints are good. Just a lot of details that a lot of people would never see, but the ones that do open up and see it, they're going to know that we put a lot of time and a lot of love into building this thing. So I've already got it kind of halfway done. I didn't want to rip the thing completely apart because I wanted to get together, get some strings on it, and you guys can try it out and see what you think. And you know, we're using a vintage bridge on this. It's a 6-mount, and I've got all the pieces and parts right here. There's our stock vintage bridge, you know, with the Fender saddles on it. All the tooling and everything from the early 50s to 60s is what is used to make these bridges now. So everything is exactly the way it was. That's one of the beauties of Fender. We hung on to a lot of the old Fender tooling and stuff like that, and we still have it today. Leo's machines have been rebuilt a few times because it's just gone through so many times and to making the parts that we need. But they still work beautifully, and that's the bridge that we end up using. I usually will mount it with the 6 screws. These screws are pretty much exact like the early vintage screws as well. So everything, you know, vintage-wise is as close as we can humanly possibly get to the real deal. And we're still working on other things that I've been pushing for. Like we've got like the new caps and stuff for the early 50s Tellys and Strats, and like we call them the chiclet wrap, paper wrap caps. We use those like on the 50s Strats a lot now. Fender's using those now. The next move I want to make is to get the pots right, the way that they used to be with the can. They're like a can type of Coke can, the bottom of a Coke can look. These are beautiful, and they've worked well for us for years, but it's like, I figured some people won't care about it, other people that'll open it up and say, man, this isn't really as vintage as they thought. Because we're already there with the pickup wire and everything. This is all the same cloth wire that we used back in the 50s. So right down to the switches and everything too. But this is the next move that I want to make, is to try to upgrade this and make this more vintage correct along with the switch too. And they're both, you know, U.S. made pots and switches, nicely made, but we want to get like the old drawings of the real deal and try to copy that exactly. So maybe at some point we'll get to work on that and make that happen. That's what we're trying to do right now. What I do now, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this bridge down here. I said I don't usually use these type of tools. Like a set of my own tools at work that work really nice. These bridges work really well if you set them up right the first time. We've had problems in the past with you know, people complaining about the bridges not standing to. Well, this is a Leo Fender design, man. It's been around since the 50s and 60s. And people that know how to use tremolos and adjust their tremolos really well, it works out fine for them. There's, you know, we're still using original tooling, original specs and everything on this, so why would we want to change that? They still work good. If you know how to set them up right, there's no problems with them. Usually when I work on guitars for the month, you know, we ship guitars monthly there. I'll usually have 2 or 3 guitars going at once. You know, I'll dress a few necks on, you know, dressing these frets on the necks and have them put aside ready to build. And I'll build 2 or 3 guitars during a day, you know, for the month. Not saying I'm building a guitar from scratch in one day. It doesn't happen. There's a process, a long process that goes from milling to sanding to buff and polish to paint, all that stuff. So there's a big thing. We work on schedules there, and usually if I'm running some 60s bodies and necks, I'll try to batch them all together so we run them all at the same time, and makes things a lot more easier for us when we go to ship guitars at the end of the month. And oh shoot, I got to build a 50 Strat. Oh, I got to do a 60 Strat. We have everything already kind of lined up, queued up for the month, and makes it a lot easier on us. Now, usually I'll get these screws screwed down with that screw gun there as close as I can to the bottom. One of the tricks I like to do to make this thing stay in tune is to try to get these screws down as close as I can to the top of this plate and still have complete movement of the bridge, meaning that it moves up and down without lagging, you know. And what I do, this is almost on top of the plate, I'll screw it down, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at the bottom of this plate right here as it's laying flat on the body. I'll screw this screw down, just ever so slowly. Once I see this bridge start to raise up on the back, which is what happens when you tighten it too tight, just barely starts to raise up, I'll stop right there and I'll back it off, unscrew it about a quarter of a turn, and then I stop. And that's right there, that screw head is on top of the bridge plate as low as you could possibly go, and there's not going to be any drag on the bridge coming up and down, which causes the guitar to go out of tune. That helps you to keep that thing in tune. Those 2 right there are perfect where I want them. And I'm always constantly checking it each time when I screw a screw down, just to make sure there's no drag on it. And this is like perfect right now. So that right there, those screws are like almost all the way down, and the bridge still moves very, very nice. That's what you want. So when you strain up and everything and go to use a tremolo, it's going to stay in tune pretty well. But there's other tricks also that I'll show you that I like to do when I get to the point where I'm building that. So I've already kind of pre-fit this neck on here earlier, so I really wouldn't have to deal with too much doing it and hopefully something chip out on it. And it does happen. It's a fragile part of the body right here, but we have special files and sanding techniques that we use to clean out the paint stuff on the inside right here, which works really well when you go to fit the neck in. All our tolerances on our CNC machines are very tight, so that we have a really good neck fit on all our bodies. I think that's crucial to the sound of a guitar. I love all the early 50s and 60s guitars, but let's be honest here. Back then, if you look at it, you'll see a lot of them. Some of them had like gaps. You could put like 2 guitar picks in there. That's really not a good thing, unless you've got that neck so tight on there, because you want that wood marriage to vibrate completely around all the wood. And by having a good, nice, tight-fitting neck and a good marriage right here, it's going to resonate really well with the body and neck together. It really does make a big difference in your sound guitar. So I've made sure that I did this one really nice, and the neck's going to fit really well with it. What I like to do next, I usually, especially with NOS guitar, real guitars I don't do this because there's no need to. They really get messed up anyways. But I'll go ahead and solder the 2 points. So the jack is just, you know, oh, I forgot to tell you about that. Like you're talking about the grounding. Okay, this is typical vintage style. You know, you got the 3 springs or 5 springs, whatever you like to use, coming off of here onto the claw, off the claw, into this hole that we drill right here. It's in the vintage spot, and it's basically through here. We do it to the ground of the jack, and there's also a ground and the hot wire off the jack that come through here. So this all ties into the back part in here. So it's only essentially 2 wires that you're going to attach instead of having a bunch of different wires going. That's vintage style.
So you're running the trem right to the black lead on
that? Yeah. And
for the output jack.
it doesn't matter. I mean, you could still do it this from here and then to the pots and then run the pot. You know, the jack, it's the same thing, but this is vintage style. This is how we did it back in the day, so this is how we do it now. But there are other ways of doing it that, you know, like we're talking about shielding and all that stuff that you can do. I personally am not a big fan of that, especially if I got vintage guitars. I want to try to keep the real deal. That's how we did them back then. But it can be done. You know, it's all up to the person who owns the guitar. You know. So I usually the white wire is usually our hot wire, and I will solder that to the center post of the volume pot right here. And then this one, the ground wire, I usually put to the outside of the can of the volume pot, vintage style.
How hot an iron do you usually use?
I don't know what this one's set at, but mine's usually set in the high 6s, usually for my, you know.
It's like 45.
Yeah. And I always check my points afterwards to make sure that everything looks good, that it's attached well. This is perfect. So, you know, that aspect is done with it. And then all I do is I just tuck the wire, I bend it a little bit, and the thing just drops right in. There's no dragging with wires underneath there at the bottom, and it's just a good fit overall. When people are plopping down a lot of money for Masterbuilt stuff, you kind of get the reason why now. There's a lot of attention to detail involved in this stuff, and you won't get that with any other guitar that Fender does as much as detail as we put into it. I mean, they do it a lot on the team built stuff is very, very well. The PL10 side of our regular line production stuff is really well also. But if you took one of those guitars apart and took one of these apart, look at it, you'll see a noticeable difference.
Were the aluminum shields always on vintage guitars?
Yeah, like on the 60s ones, they're definitely, it's kind of like a metal shield that we put on the bottom of the pick guard, and on like a 50s single ply guards, it usually has a shield just right here. And yeah, I mean, other people have like gotten rid of the shield because they didn't really care for it. They lined the back with copper, which you could do as well. That works and it helps out. But you know, the vintage nuts out there, they usually like to see everything vintage correct, so that's what we're doing here. A lot of times when we go to fit necks, even though this neck's already been pre-fitted, it's pretty good. After we clean out the pocket, a lot of the builders will do like some soap. We use like regular ivory soap, you know, and hit it on the edge right there, and that helps to get that neck to go, and it just fits right in there. Didn't have to do this with this one because this is like a real thin finish, oil rub finish, so the neck fits in there really good, and it kind of just fits in like that. Makes a little squeaky noise, but it's there, and don't have to worry about it. I also have like a lot of my Masterbuilt stuff now that I'm doing, not just to remind you it's one of my guitars, but I have our signature neck plates that a lot of the builders are starting to use now. And it's kind of cool. And it was a request from the Japanese distributors, and they loved it. So I started doing that with them, and then now whenever I do like a show guitar or something like this, I'll use that on there. A lot of my regular production ones, I don't, unless the dealer specifies that they want a neck plate like that. Usually if it's not that, it's just the Custom Shop V logo, and it says Fender, or it says Custom Shop on it. And that's a cool plate as well. So I like to tighten the neck down, not too tight, but it's just enough that it's snugging up there, and then I'll do the rest of it by hand, which doesn't have to be that tight. If you do too tight, then you want to crack in the finish, and that's not a good thing. So So usually about a half turn, and that should be good. Want to take a look? Anybody want to take a look up close? You can see the neck fit now. The way it is, it's tight. You couldn't get anything in there, not even a piece of paper. And it's nice, and it's like, you know, if you ever have to take a neck out of there, you can do it very easily. I strongly suggest if somebody wants to get work on a brand new guitar like this, take it to somebody that knows it. Bring it here, let George do it. These guys deal with this stuff, they know, or if it's something that needs to come back to us, we do it. It's not as easy as it looks to take it apart and put it back together, but I've done it so many times, all our builders have done it millions of times, that we know what we're doing. And you know, if you ever need the work done on it, it's good to bring it to professionals and have them do it for you. That way you know that you're getting a great job done on the guitar. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and finish. Take the rest of the pickguard screws. There's so many different options now too that people can ask for with guitars. Hardware colors, you know, we chrome, gold, black, bronze. I'm trying to figure out a way to do anodizing. That I'm really into, like really custom color stuff that I'm hoping to introduce something like that in the coming years for you know, anodizing bridge parts and stuff like that. Hoping it won't change the tone of the metal too much, but I think it really gives a cool look for something new, like a new color and hardware options and stuff like that. I'd also like to see if there's a way that we could do the pole pieces on the magnets. I know that I've done them in gold before, and they look really cool. I've done them in black before, but I mean, like a powder coated type of magnet would look really cool on something like this. Again, not sure how much of a tonal change would be on the guitar. I wouldn't think it would be too bad, but you never know. But it's good to experiment with that kind of stuff. These are some of my tools that I brought from work. They're kind of old now, and this is my bridge block that I wedge in the back here when I go to set up the bridge so it's off the body. That's how I like to set it up. I've had this thing since I've been at Fender, so this thing's like 26 years old. If you look at like the Stevie Ray Vaughan guitar right there, and you see how the wood's all like, feels like a Western handrail, you know what I mean? You feel the bottom of this thing, it's the same way. So that's the real deal. There's no relicking there. But it's like my good luck charm. I've had that thing ever since I've been here, and it's what I use. And it's a really cool little piece that I made a long time ago. So like I said, I have the bridge and stuff already kind of preset. What I do is before I put strings on and stuff like that, I like to get the bridge height saddles kind of ballpark where I'm going to be. I've had good luck on some days where I put the strings on, I check it up here when I measure it, and it's already nuts on, because I've done so many of them. Or it's really close where I only have to turn it like a half a turn or something. Now Fender's Masterbuilders are starting to do a series of how-to videos and care. I don't know if you guys have seen any of that stuff, but we're starting to, when we get some time, we're going to start posting some more videos up there to kind of help you guys along if you ever have questions about how we do certain things, or what I can do to improve my tremolo, or how to, you know, clean my fretboard or whatever. There's going to be a lot of how-to videos and stuff that the custom shop's going to be posting up on the website. There's already some stuff up there. I did a couple things. Some of the other builders have done some stuff. So if you get a chance, you go on the website and check it out on the custom shop website. And there's some how-to videos in there. And it's kind of interesting to learn how to do a lot of stuff there. So what I did is I adjusted these saddles kind of to the curvature of the neck already. This is a 9.5 radius, like I said. So this is, you know, is it 9.5? Probably not, but it's real close. So it makes it a lot easier when I go to put strings on this thing. And Fender has their own strings that we use. We were manufacturing them for years and years, and then we stopped for a while, and we started using other ones. And then the custom shop hooked up a deal with Diodario. So we're using Diodario strings right now, the color-coded series. And they're a good, consistent string. They seem to work well with us. I know you guys all have your own brands of strings you use, and that's cool. But leaving from the shop, these are the strings that we use, and I've never really had any problems with my strings at all. Like, you know, they hold their tone really well. I usually like to wipe my strings down after I'm done playing a gig, because like I said, there's a lot of mung and sweat and booze and stuff that go over all over them, and you want to keep them clean. So the way I clean my strings is a little bit kind of weird. I steal my wife's hand towels that we use at home to wash our face and stuff with, and it's perfect. I grab one of those, you know, like this. It's, you know, it's smaller than this, obviously, and I'll pour a little bit of alcohol right here, just a little bead of it right here, and I can slip it underneath the thing, underneath the strings, and I can clean the strings all the way up and down. And I do that after every show when I play, and it just prolongs the tonality of the string, because it gets built up with among and oils from your fingers and stuff after a while, and you'll tend to break strings a lot quicker. If you take care of them, they'll last you a little bit longer. I have the luxury of changing my strings every time before I play a gig or rehearsal, because I can't play on old strings, man. It just doesn't work for me, and I know a lot of people don't have the luxury of doing that, but I do, because I got to deal with D'Addario with strings from them for a long time, and I love it. I mean, I'm spoiled that way, but it's like I can't play guitar for wise, because I've been pretty hard when I've been, and I break a lot of strings. So if they're new, I mean, every gig I have to change it before a gig. There's no other way around it. This usually goes a lot faster for me when I'm at work, but I like kind of going slow and just kind of showing all the stuff in between. So you kind of see my bench gets kind of messy after a while, but I kind of still keep the area where the guitar's at clean as possible, so I don't have any dings or anything hitting me. Old reliable cutters here, I've had these for years too. I like to have a little bit of slag in each one of the strings. Usually some people cut it too short, and it's like, you know, how come it doesn't stay to me? You got to have a little bit of wrap around your strings. I like to suggest at least 2 to 3 wraps around each post will help. And you know, with these vintage tuners are great, because you just put it down and bend it down, arc it, and wind it, and you're good to go. Usually on the bass ones, you can get away with like 2 wraps. When I get up here, it's definitely 3.
Okay.
Usually standard Fender style bridges, we set up at an angle a little bit, so you've got a little bit of that action with the tremolo that you can kind of pull up, you know, down on it, and true tremolo. A lot of players don't like that, because sometimes they'll do a lot of detuning and stuff like that with their low E strings or high E's or whatever, and they'll set the tremolo flat on the body. You can do that as well, but the tremolo doesn't work the same. The only action you're going to have with the tremolo is down. Well, you won't be able to get the up thing unless, you know, you're magic. But I like to have that, you know, usually do it about 3/30 seconds off the top of the body to the bottom of the bridge plate. That's the gap that I like to have right there, and it's perfect. I've got my strings on. The way I check my things, I mean, usually like on the line, they'll use a lot of gauges and stuff. I've done so many of these guitars that the first thing I like to do is I like to check the bow or the neck. The way I do it, a lot of guys will use capos up here so they don't have to deal with it. I usually will push down the first fret, the last fret. Take my thumb and I'll hit it right around the 7th. And this is perfect, right where I want it already. I had it pre-adjusted and it hasn't moved, because I got a 1/4 saw neck on here, so it's not really moving much. I usually like to have that bow at about anywhere from 8 to 10 thousandths at the 7th fret. If I've got that, you're going to have a good amount of just under bow, just barely on there, and you're good to go. They have tools now, and I think Cruz Tools, my other company, has these new tools out for adjusting the truss rod at the butt end, which is not really like the best design that Fender's ever done, but it's vintage, and that's the way we do it. But a lot of people, if they have to adjust the neck, usually will have to take the neck off, adjust it, then put it back on again. That could be dangerous if you're constantly taking the neck off, putting it on, take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on. You're eventually going to start busting out your corner right there. But now they've come up with some really cool tools that will fit into that top part right there, and you'll be able to turn it and adjust it like that nicely. So, next thing I would do is after I adjust the neck, we know that it's set here. I usually like to cut the nut next, and I've already kind of cut it close to where I need it to be. I am going to need to cut it down a little bit more though. Here, I'm going to need another screw gun, like a drill, like a Makita drill or something. So what I do, again, a lot of guys will use gauges, which I have those gauges, but I haven't used them in a number of years. I really haven't had to. Usually I like to have the space underneath the nut at about 18 thousandths, and that's a good feeler gauge. They sell these at an auto parts store, Walmart, Kmart. That's perfect. To get the nut height on there. I like to get them even a little bit lower than that, so I'll do them by hand a lot of time, or by eye. That's how I like to do them. So these are pretty close. They are going to need to be adjusted a little bit. This is probably like 30 thousandths right now. It's kind of high. So what I do is I take my feather edge file, is what I start with right here, and go to the high E string. And I'll just kind of like lightly rock it back and forth. With this bone material, this is bone, real bone that we use on the nut. If you don't cut it right, or cut it at an angle, it'll chip out really easy. You have to be really careful with it. So you see, I don't like to use the gauges. I check by usually fretting down on the second fret and then dropping it right here. And you can see if that thing's bouncing off the fret just barely, that's where you want it. I don't mess with it any more than that because I like to have it as low as possible, still have enough height on there that it's not going to buzz out when you're playing it. You see I'm kind of rocking it back and forth. And I'll show you a little trick I do after that when it's done too.
That you're not fouling.
Yep, each one's, you know, made, I've got these specially designed ones that are good for the D, A, and E strings. This one I use for the last two. The real bone is more like vintage correct, and I think it sounds good. It's a good hard surface, and every little point where a string goes over, and it's got a good glide on it and everything, it's going to sound good. So I did manage to pack away a couple caps and stuff, like the one I used on the bottom of this guard is essentially one of these. This is like our vintage style cap for like the 60s, early 60s Strats that we're using. Here's one of the ones I brought for that we use on the 50s, late 50s, and early 60s had these as well. These are oil-filled caps. For anybody that's interested, that's the kind of stuff that we're using now. Leaning it more towards like vintage correct stuff, you know. Usually when we put our string trees on, we put them right across from an A tuner, which is right, you know, on the IE and the B strings. Woo! Nitro guy. Scary using one of these things, man, I'll tell you what. No pressure here, guys. So, initially that's where we're at. Now the next thing I'll usually like to do is do like a quick setup on this. Okay, so I'll usually adjust on the 17th fret or 18th fret. What I like to do is we do it on 30 seconds. I usually like to have the action on something like this at about 3.5 to 4 30 seconds, which I'm almost there already from the pre-setup that I did earlier. So like a couple little turns.
Do you set those bridge tops flat or angled?
Which ones?
Saddle.
The saddles?
Saddles. Do you keep them flat?
Yeah, oh yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah, so they're not
Yeah.
angles like that. Yeah, I try to do that to the curvature of the fretboard. That's a good practice, and it's so weird working without music. I always have music playing when I'm working, just helps me pass the time. And it's usually like some rock stuff or metal or whatever. Everybody listens to their own stuff at work, man. There's always a bunch of different music going on. Usually like to set the pickups on these things. Vintage specs are usually on the bass side, which is the side I'm working on right now. I usually measure from the top of the magnet to the bottom of the string. And I usually like to do that about anywhere from 7 to 8 30 seconds on the bass side. And then on the treble side, I'll do it to 6 30 seconds. So pretty much just say 8, call it 8 and 6. And that's standard for Fender setups. You can adjust them wherever you like them. On these pickups, you might even want to get a little bit closer to it because these are the low blow pickups that I was talking about earlier. Bum tone pickups. Hey, here we go. Okay. So, the next thing I do, I've already had, like I said, I already got the bridge set where I want it. It's like 30 seconds right off the back of the body, which is cool, so it's ready to go. I've pre-tuned it already. The next thing is for somebody to find that pickguard screw, which I don't need because I got extras. But, thank you. I use 3 springs as a standard setup for these things, and I usually will set them, you know, like this. A lot of guys will do them. It really makes no difference, really, as far as how the tremolo works and stuff like that. Other people say it does, whatever. I've done enough of these that it doesn't really matter. So now, after I pull that block out and I check my tuning again, it's a little bit sharp. Get rid of that by unscrewing the claw a little bit, give it a little bit less relief on it. You see the this thing's gonna resonate really nice. So, that's pretty much it, setup wise on this thing. It's pretty much ready to go. See, I have that tone on the bridge. No, there's no blend on this one. But it does have that tone on the bridge, which I think is essentially.